Politics is the only job where you can crash the country and still get reelected. 1. The button blunder. Lyndon Johnson's pants call. In 1964, President Lyndon B. Johnson personally called the Hager Clothing Company to complain that his custom slacks were too tight around what he delicately described as his nuts. The actual White House tape exists. It's 5 minutes of the leader of the free world demanding extra room in the crotch and warning that his pants were cutting him like a cheap knife. He even gave measurements for where my nuts hang. The poor tailor had to listen in silence as the President of the United States detailed his thigh chafing in graphic Texan poetry. America had just discovered nuclear deterrence, and this man was declaring war on polyester. It's still the only time in history a presidential scandal involved inseam insecurities instead of international intrigue. 2. The balloon debacle. Jimmy Carter versus the Swamp Rabbit Inn. 1979, President Jimmy Carter was quietly fishing in his hometown pond when a swamp rabbit, yes, an actual angry rabbit, swam toward his boat, thrashing like a tiny aquatic demon. Secret Service thought it was an assassin. Carter tried to shoo it away with a paddle, and when the press found out, the story became President attacked by Killer Bunny. The Soviet Union was still very real, but America's biggest threat that week was a damp rodent. The image destroyed what little macho credibility Carter had left. Late-night hosts called him the only president ever defeated by a rabbit. Somewhere, Bugs Bunny was filing that under foreign policy wins. 3. The Segway faceplant. George W. Bush's rolling disaster. In 2003, George W. Bush decided to test a brand new invention, the Segway. These futuristic scooters were supposed to revolutionize transportation. Instead, they gave America a perfect metaphor for political overconfidence. Cameras rolled as Bush climbed. A board immediately lost balance and toppled over in front of reporters. No enemies, no scandals, just gravity and hubris working together for bipartisan laughter. The Segway company later used the footage for safety training under the heading, "What Not to Do." Somewhere in a White House archive, there's probably a slow-motion version set to patriotic music. It was the first time a world leader literally fell off his platform. 4. The Oops inauguration. When Obama had to redo the oath. In 2009, during Barack Obama's historic inauguration, Chief Justice John Roberts managed to forget the exact wording of the presidential oath. You'd think the one line that transfers nuclear codes would be rehearsed, right? Instead, Roberts fumbled the sequence, Obama hesitated, and the whole world watched two of the most powerful men on Earth play verbal ping-pong on live TV. The Constitution technically requires the oath to be said exactly right, so out of an abundance of legal paranoia, they had to redo the ceremony. In private, in the White House map room, 24 hours later. No crowd, no fanfare, just a second take, like it was a deleted scene from The West Wing. Imagine being sworn in as president and immediately doing reshoots because your co-star flubbed the line. Historians will forever remember it as the only time an American presidency began with a do-over, a perfect reminder that even in government, sometimes you just need a second take. 5. Nixon versus the milk lobby, the bribe that wasn't lactose-free. Before Watergate drowned his presidency, Richard Nixon had a smaller, creamier scandal. In 1970, the nation's milk producers quietly offered $2 million in campaign donations in exchange for higher price supports. Within weeks, Nixon's administration approved exactly what they wanted. Coincidence? About as much as finding dairy in a vegan cafe. When reporters exposed the deal, the public learned the president had essentially been bought off by milk. It was dubbed Milkgate, which sounds adorable until you realize it involved millions in illegal contributions. The government later forced the dairymen to return the money, but the damage was done. Somewhere between the Vietnam War and the moon landing, America's commander-in-chief had become the world's most expensive milkman. If you ever wondered how corruption could sound wholesome, picture Richard Nixon saying, "I am not a crook," while holding a glass of 2%. 6. The Alaskan Bridge to Nowhere, $398 million and 0 cars. In the mid-2000s, Congress approved nearly $400 million for a massive bridge in Alaska, one that would connect a town of 8,000 people to an island with 50 residents. The locals didn't even ask for it. It was a pure pork barrel masterpiece, pushed by politicians who wanted to show they could bring home the bacon, even if that bacon was a 4-lane suspension bridge to an empty patch of tundra. Critics called it the Bridge to Nowhere, and it quickly became the national mascot for government waste. Construction was eventually canceled, but not before millions were spent on planning, studies, and of course, promotional brochures about the benefits of a bridge to absolutely nothing. To this day, it's the perfect metaphor for politics. Lots of money, zero direction, and a ribbon-cutting ceremony for a road that doesn't exist. 7. The potato photo op. Dan Quayle versus spelling and starch. In 1992, Vice President Dan Quayle visited an elementary school in New Jersey, the kind of harmless PR stop meant to make politicians look human. The class was doing a spelling bee, and Quayle decided to help. A student confidently wrote potato on the board. Perfect. Except Quayle, channeling the spirit of a confused grocery clerk, told the boy he'd forgotten a letter and helpfully corrected it to potato. Cameras captured everything. Within hours, every late-night host in America had a new punchline. The word became a national symbol of political incompetence, one extra vowel that cost him his credibility. It's the kind of mistake that follows you forever. You could cure cancer, balance the budget, and someone would still yell, "Hey, how do you spell potato?" from across the room. To this day, Quayle's blunder remains a cautionary tale in American politics. Never argue spelling with a 10-year-old when there's a TV camera involved. 8. The doomed campaign jingle, "I like Ike," meets "Please clap." Presidential campaigns have always been strange theater, but few moments were as painfully awkward as Jeb Bush's infamous "Please clap." During a 2016 town hall, after delivering a line he thought was inspiring, the audience sat in absolute silence, the kind you can feel in your soul. Jeb looked around, gave a small, defeated smile, and whispered those immortal words, "Please clap." The internet pounced. It became the anthem of political despair, a two-word obituary for enthusiasm. Memes flooded the digital world, and "Please clap" joined mission accomplished in the Museum of Political Humiliation. What makes it perfect is how human it was. A man just begging for validation from a crowd that gave him none. It's the campaign moment every politician fears. Not scandal, not defeat, but realizing the room has emotionally checked out. 9. The tan suit scandal. When fashion broke democracy. In 2014, President Obama committed what some pundits called a national embarrassment. His crime? Wearing a light tan suit during a press briefing. That's it. No policy meltdown, no international crisis, just a khaki-colored jacket that made America collectively lose its mind for 48 hours. Cable news anchors debated the symbolism of the suit like it was a foreign policy issue. Was it too casual? Too confident? Too beige? Even members of Congress chimed in, treating it like a wardrobe. Watergate. Obama, unbothered, went back to running the country while the press analyzed his tailoring choices as if the fate of democracy depended on lapels. Years later, people still remember it. Proof that in politics, sometimes the dumbest controversies get the loudest applause. A man could fix the economy, but God forbid he do it while looking summer fresh. 10. The turkey pardon gone wrong. When George H.W. Bush met chaos in feathers. Every year, the President of the United States performs one of America's strangest traditions, pardoning a turkey. It's meant to be lighthearted, a photo op with a happy, fluffy bird before Thanksgiving dinner. But in 1989, President George H.W. Bush's pardoned turkey didn't get the memo. The bird, named Freedom, decided to make a break for it mid-ceremony, flapping and gobbling its way toward the press corps like a poultry missile. Secret Service agents literally had to chase a live turkey across the Rose Garden. Cameras rolled. Dignity did not survive. Bush tried to keep his composure, joking, "He's a lively one," while handlers scrambled to retrieve the runaway symbol of mercy. Freedom was eventually caught and actually lived a long life on a Virginia farm. Though, rumor has it, he was never the same after the most chaotic pardon in history. The event cemented the annual turkey pardon as both a cherished tradition and a guaranteed opportunity for political slapstick. 11. The Howard Dean Scream. When enthusiasm killed a campaign. In 2004, Democratic candidate Howard Dean was on fire after the Iowa caucus. His energy was unmatched, his supporters wild. Then came the scream, the shriek that ended it all. During a post-rally speech, Dean tried to pump up his crowd with a primal, off-mic yell that sounded like a mix between a karate grunt and a malfunctioning air horn. The infamous Dean scream echoed across the nation, replayed endlessly on TV and the internet. Voters suddenly saw not passion but unhinged chaos. Overnight, his momentum vanished. It's the only time in American history someone lost a presidential campaign because of a single syllable. The irony? In person, the scream barely registered. Microphones amplified it out of proportion. But perception is politics, and in the digital age, one bad noise can erase an entire movement. 12. The plane door fiasco. Gerald Ford's gravity problem. Gerald Ford had a complicated relationship with staircases. During his presidency, he slipped, stumbled, or tumbled more times than any world leader in recorded history. The most iconic moment came in 1975, when he tried to exit Air Force One in Austria and fell straight down the plane's steps in front of an international audience. Cameras captured the fall in glorious slow motion. Chevy Chase turned it into a recurring gag on Saturday Night Live, and Ford falling became shorthand for presidential clumsiness. To his credit, Ford took it with good humor, joking that at least he made foreign policy down to earth. Still, it was the beginning of his reputation as the man who could trip over a flat surface. Historians later noted that he was actually one of the most athletic presidents ever. He just couldn't win a fight against gravity. 13. The Al Gore kiss. The PDA heard round the world. At the 2000 Democratic National Convention, Vice President Al Gore tried to prove to America that he wasn't a robotic policy wonk. His strategy? Passionate public affection. When he took the stage, he grabbed his wife, Tipper, and gave her a kiss that went on longer than most network dramas. It wasn't a quick peck. It was a full, cinematic make-out session in front of millions of viewers and a sea of awkwardly clapping delegates. The crowd went wild. The internet went weirder. Commentators debated whether it was romantic or terrifying. Some said it humanized him. Others said it traumatized them. Late-night hosts dubbed it the kiss that launched 1,000 memes. Gore's approval briefly spiked. Proof that sometimes all it takes to win votes is convincing America you've kissed someone before. 14. The press conference slip. When Reagan forgot to mute the joke. In 1984, during a routine microphone test before a radio address, President Ronald Reagan decided to warm up with some humor. He leaned into the mic and joked, "My fellow Americans, I'm pleased to tell you I've signed legislation that will outlaw Russia forever. We begin bombing in 5 minutes." It was supposed to be a private off-air quip. It wasn't. The live feed accidentally went out to multiple radio stations. Within minutes, the world's major news networks were reporting that the US president had just joked about starting World War III. The Kremlin wasn't laughing. Soviet forces went on partial alert, and the White House scrambled to explain that it was just Gipper humor. It became the most expensive punchline in history, proof that the only thing faster than nuclear weapons was Reagan's sense of timing. The world learned a valuable lesson: never test microphones with global destruction jokes. 15. The Kennedy hair crisis. When the wind nearly ended. Camelot John F. Kennedy was America's golden boy, youthful, polished, and camera-ready. But in 1963, during a windy outdoor speech in Berlin, Mother Nature decided to stage a coup. As he delivered the iconic "Ich bin ein Berliner" line, a gust of wind sent his perfect hair into a full-scale mutiny. Secret Service agents literally held their breath as Kennedy fought to keep his presidential poise while his famous coif performed acrobatics. The press, obsessed with image, almost turned it into a scandal. "Has JFK lost his cool?" one headline teased. Instead, the public loved him even more. It humanized him. If a man could face down the Soviets and a bad hair day at the same time, he was clearly built for leadership. It was the first and last time in U.S. history that hairspray nearly affected foreign relations. 16. The inflatable boat photo op. Bill Clinton's nautical disaster. In 1995, President Bill Clinton decided to show his relatable side by joining a summer boating event in Arkansas. The plan was simple: hop into an inflatable dinghy with a few volunteers, wave at cameras, and glide majestically down the river. Except the Secret Service hadn't tested the boat. Within minutes, the president's inflatable vessel started deflating. Live on television, Clinton, ever the optimist, tried to keep waving as his boat slowly folded in half like a soggy taco. The Coast Guard had to swoop in for a presidential rescue. Reporters couldn't stop laughing, dubbing it the SS Oops. Clinton took it in stride, quipping, "At least the economy's still afloat." The photo of the half-sunk president became instant political gold. It remains the perfect image of the 90s. Confidence, chaos, and a leader literally trying to keep things from collapsing under him. 17. The debate fly. When Mike Pence lost to an insect. In the 2020 vice presidential debate, all eyes were on Mike Pence until a fly landed on his head and refused to leave. For 2 agonizing minutes, the insect sat there, stealing the spotlight and national attention. Social media exploded. Within hours, the fly had its own Twitter account, fan art, and even campaign merchandise. Late-night shows ran segments titled "The Real Winner of the Debate." Pence never flinched, which somehow made it worse, like he was trying to outstare the bug into submission. The incident became a metaphor for modern politics. No matter how serious the topic, a single fly can derail everything. Historians will one day study that night and conclude that America didn't remember a single policy, just the moment an uninvited insect achieved more screen time than half the candidates on stage. 18. The Peanut Panic. Jimmy Carter's agricultural disaster. Before becoming president, Jimmy Carter was proud to call himself a peanut farmer. It was his brand, humble, hardworking, all-American. But when he got to Washington, the peanuts came with him, literally. Carter put his family's peanut warehouse in a blind trust to avoid conflicts of interest, but the media still obsessed over it like he'd smuggled plutonium instead of legumes. Critics accused him of secretly running a peanut empire from the Oval Office. Late-night hosts joked about Big Peanut controlling U.S. policy. Even worse, the business went bankrupt while he was in office, turning his greatest strength into a national punchline. The man who once grew the South's favorite snack became the president blamed for crashing the peanut market. It's the only time in U.S. history where a food item managed to politically assassinate its own farmer. 19. The Beer Summit. Obama's backyard diplomacy. Gone flat. In 2009, after a racially charged arrest of a Harvard professor made national headlines, President Obama tried to defuse the situation with what he called a beer summit. He invited the professor and the arresting officer to the White House lawn for a friendly chat over cold brews. The media turned it into the most over-analyzed backyard barbecue in history. Every camera angle, beer brand, and sip rate was dissected like a diplomatic summit. Some said it was unity in action, others called it a PR stunt gone flat. Obama drank Bud Light, which somehow became a talking point about patriotism. In the end, nothing was solved, no treaties signed, but millions debated which beer choice symbolized America's soul. It was a masterclass in modern politics, a three-person meeting that somehow divided an entire country over alcohol preferences. 20. The UFO disclosure dance. When politicians met the aliens. For decades, U.S. presidents have danced around UFOs like kids, claiming they don't believe in ghosts while checking under the bed. In 1995, Bill Clinton told the press he looked into Area 51 and found no aliens. No one believed him. Then came Obama, who joked that extraterrestrial information was classified. Again, no one laughed. They just added him to the cover of Weekly World News. But the true political UFO moment came in 2021, when the Pentagon released videos confirming unidentified aerial phenomena. For one brief, shining moment, America united in cosmic confusion. Senators gave interviews sounding like sci-fi fanboys, and cable news anchors tried to pronounce extraterrestrial without giggling. Congress even held hearings where grown adults seriously debated whether tic-tac-shaped objects were invading Earth. It was the only bipartisan topic everyone could agree on, that nobody, from presidents to generals, had any idea what was flying over Nevada. 21. The shoe incident. When George W. Bush became a reflex legend. In 2008, President George W. Bush was holding a press conference in Baghdad when an Iraqi journalist suddenly hurled not one but two shoes at his head. In Middle Eastern culture, throwing shoes is the ultimate insult. But Bush's reflexes turned it into a sports highlight. He ducked both projectiles like a political ninja, barely missing a beat before joking, "That was a size 10." The video went instantly viral worldwide, turning Bush into an accidental meme hero. The journalist was arrested, the shoes were confiscated, and millions of people wondered what training montage Bush had gone through to dodge footwear at presidential speed. Years later, the incident became part of his legacy, proof that even in the most serious situations, he could literally sidestep scandal. It remains the only recorded time a U.S. president won an international press conference with agility alone. Somewhere, the Secret Service probably added incoming shoe protocol to its official handbook. 22. The Checkers speech. Nixon's puppy-fueled redemption arc before Watergate made him infamous. Richard Nixon was nearly destroyed by something far smaller, a dog. In 1952, accused of using campaign funds for personal expenses, Nixon went on national TV to defend himself. But instead of explaining the finances, he delivered a 30-minute emotional monologue about his family's new puppy, Checkers, and how he refused to give it back because the kids love it. America melted. Overnight, Nixon went from scandalous to sympathetic, saved by a Cocker Spaniel. The speech became legendary, not for its content, but for its sheer manipulation genius. Political analysts still study it as the birth of the emotional appeal strategy. He turned guilt into charm, corruption into compassion, all by weaponizing a puppy's face. In the end, Nixon stayed on the ticket, and Checkers became the most politically influential dog since FDR's Fala. It's proof that in American politics, sincerity doesn't always win, but a cute dog absolutely does. 23. The silent mic drop. Teddy Roosevelt's half-finished speech. In 1912, Theodore Roosevelt was giving a campaign speech in Milwaukee when a would-be assassin shot him in the chest. Most people would call it a day. Roosevelt called it an inconvenience. He coughed, checked for blood, and realizing he wasn't immediately dying, stepped onto the stage anyway. Then, bleeding through his shirt, he declared, "It takes more than that to kill a bull moose," and spoke for 90 minutes. Only afterward did doctors discover that the bullet had been slowed by his folded 50-page speech and a metal eyeglass case. Roosevelt kept the slug in his chest for life as a souvenir. The audience thought it was political theater. It was just Tuesday for Teddy. The man turned an assassination attempt into an encore. It remains the toughest performance in U.S. history and the wildest example of old school American stubbornness ever recorded. From flying shoes to killer bunnies, politics proves one thing: history's dumbest moments always vote themselves back in.